Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Captive Audience. And Dawn Anderson is here and she's back. Leslie Snyder's with me as well. I'm so glad she's here. Welcome back, Leslie. You're
Thank
looking all
you.
refreshed.
I had a great time. It's nice to take a vacation every once in a while and just, get into nature, get back to kind of resetting and
Yes,
reprioritizing.
absolutely. Well, trust me, I missed you, and I think everyone else missed you, and we're glad you're here.
Thank
And
you.
let's have some fun.
Okay.
So,
Let's.
So we're going to start off with a couple of fun things. I thought that it'd be great to not just, well, it is serious, but it's also fun. So let's have a good time with this. And the first thing I start off with, I'll call it my comedy first few minutes, and that is about the mayor of New Orleans, Latoya Cantrell. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have followed this, but it's another one of these you can't make this stuff up kinds of moments. And so I'll just give it to you real quick. So the first thing to recognize that New Orleans is one of the it always in the top three for the most crime, one of the most murderous cities in the United States. Of course, all of the top murderous cities are blue cities. So St. Louis, Baltimore, New Orleans, Detroit, Las Vegas, Kansas City, Memphis, and Chicago. That's the last ranking of the worst cities to live in from a violent crime perspective. So keep that in the back of your mind. So you think you'd be busy trying to solve all that crime, but she was busy. It just wasn't with crime. So the good
No, it was a
mayor,
crime. It was
it
a
was
crime. She's just, yeah.
so the good mayor was doing some extracurricular activity, shall we say, with her bodyguard and running up all kinds of bills on the city's dime. So she's been convicted now, or at least I shouldn't say convicted. She's been indicted, 18 count indictment, including conspiracy, wiretapping, fraudulent handling of taxpayer funds, and apparently fraudulent handling of her bodyguard, I shall say. So flying first class on the city's dime, all the way to Scotland in at least one case, 15,000 text messages with pictures. This looks like one of those open and closed shut cases. And all of this in the city, by the way, again, you can't make this up. Her DA was recently carjacked with his 78-year-old mom in the car. You cannot make this up. And I'll shoot you a link to that if you're interested in seeing the video. There's actually a video. You see him being carjacked with his arms in the air and him and his mom being walked away from their car, which was then driven away by a couple of criminals. Welcome to New Orleans.
So there was a bystander who took the time to video it.
No, I guess they were standing in an area like in a parking garage where
Oh,
they actually had video and they were able to pull that video.
oh, I see.
Right,
Surveillance
right.
video.
So
Okay.
yeah, but it's so you're looking at this video and you're like, I can't believe it. And the DA says, I think quote, and I quote, no one's immune from crime in New Orleans. And that's from the DA. Well, no kidding. Maybe Mr. DA, you should do something about it. Like maybe like not taking cops off the streets would be a good start. You know,
Prosecute, put him in jail. Yeah.
prosecute, put them in jail, keep them in jail. And I've never heard back in terms of whether they caught those guys or not, but there it is on video. The other, of course, if you got to talk comedy, you got to talk Portland. So, because Portland's always gonna be at the top of the list for comedy. For the last, I think it's been over 100 days straight. They've been outside the federal courthouse, which is about 15 minutes as the crow flies from where I'm sitting right now, rioting every day and all night. So you can imagine these poor neighbors. No police presence, nobody ever shows up, and they've been rioting for like 100 straight days. So finally, Trump is sending in troops, or at least threat. I'm not sure that I think they did arrive. I've not seen any news tonight to see if they're actually on site. I know they're in Portland. I don't know that they're on site, but the police are finally starting to show up. But you can't make it up. They actually have a guillotine, like a mock guillotine that they're using as a prop to show what they're all about. Now, we all know what happened during the French Revolution. Essentially, they used guillotines to take people out. You would think these people would have some self sense of doing that sort of thing in the wake of all of these assassinations and assassination attempts that have taken place. They don't feel any remorse, any self awareness, none of that.
Mhm.
They're actually using a guillotine as a prop. We've had the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We've had the LDS church that was just shot up, the Catholic Church a couple of weeks ago that was just shot up.
Mhm. Mhm.
Several other attempts where people have had drive-bys happen,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
these clowns have a mock guillotine out there. Again, You know, the good news is, as my mother used to say, they're showing us exactly who they are. The mask is off. We know who they are. So, your comment,
Well,
Leslie?
I'm sorry. I would say that, I mean, we've created a monster, right? These people are broken, they're misdirected, and they've been nurtured into defiant, violent outlaws. They've been nurtured into that because they have a network of people that's training them. I think Andy No just recently posted about how they're actually having some sort of like camp experience in Portland where they're training people on how to um, evade authorities, how to um, chip away and use bricks as weapons, how to um, do all sorts of stuff. He posted the flyer, but they have a network of people that's been training them on
Mhm.
how to be criminals. And we've had a system in place that has condoned it. So, I mean, it's like blaming your addicted kid, for using drugs when, you've been looking the other way this whole time, right? Or maybe even ordering the drugs for him, or buying the drugs for him. And I say ordering it because I don't know how it is in Portland, but in California, you can literally order drugs and they'll be delivered to your door. Um, so it's disgusting, but we know exactly who to blame, and of course these people should be held accountable, but it's just so sad that they've been instructed and supported and mentored into becoming this way.
Well, I tell you, I think, and I've been saying this for probably 5 years. We, on the conservative side of the fence, or at least those of us believe in a constitutional republic, I'll put it that way, and finally have got to come to the realization that we no longer have two sides that have different approaches to reaching the same goal, the betterment of the country. We have one side that's interested in destroying the country. When Obama talked about hope and change, he was talking about changing it completely, and we're setting this up to
Yeah.
make it happen. You're seeing in Portland, this is true in this is that we think to enforce the law against citizens. It's not at a minimum you think enforce no ways. People do this all night long, all day and all night. And the city is not taking steps in order to protect its own citizens. We see all cities, but the majority of them are doing this. This is highest. Can you, if you go back to the weather underground, the tactics that they put in the left, they learned from that. They learned that you can't attack the institution, get smashed. And that's pretty much what happened in the 60s. You first have to infiltrate those institutions, and then you no longer have to fight against them. So that's what they've done. So back in the 60s, I remember sitting around watching this thinking, well, back in the 60s when all this rioting was going on, the police just came in and they eventually took care of it. And I thought that would happen again here. Same thing with even in the Rodney King days. That whole thing that happened in the 90s, it was wild, not out of control. Eventually, government does its job, the civic authorities do their job, take care of business. This time around, in 2016, 2020, 2020, now none of that's happening, which tells you that the left now infiltrates the top of those institutions. So academia, we know they own that. The media, we can see that they own that. Local police, just take a look at the pictures of people who are doing it. Take a look at the people who are firefighters. Look at the heads of fire departments in Southern Cal, which we'll get to in a moment, the Palisades and all that. Who's the mayor? The radical left, who were youngsters during the Weather Underground, have now graduated. The folks at Cal Berkeley who were rioting in the streets in '68, guess where they are now? They run the show. And that's what we have, and that's where we are. They're traitors.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I would agree with you for sure. I mean, and you know, they've had the protection. Even back then, they had the protection, and and now they're kind of using their positions to, I mean, on one hand, like you got to hand it to them. I mean, they played the long game. And, while we were just taking care of our families and getting an education and working our jobs and saving for retirement, I mean, they worked it out. And we have to be that clever. We have to be that clever too. And I just don't. Unfortunately, it's a flaw that conservatives have. I mean, we think that all we need to do is elect the right people, and then we can turn our heads and get on to whatever we're doing. And we don't really pay attention until it shows up on our front door. I cannot believe that the residents of Portland are putting up with all. I mean, this has been going on, like you said, since 2020.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, since probably 2019, right? When was the summer of peaceful protest?
I think that was 2019 or 20, right in there.
Yeah,
yeah.
Because I
Well,
remember.
I don't think that's an accident either. You take a look at what are the cities where the citizens are known for being really nice? Minneapolis, Portland, and Seattle. You won't find a nicer group of citizens. When I was a kid, everybody would speak to you no matter what in Portland. You could go anywhere, worst neighborhood, didn't matter. People would speak to you. Same with Seattle. I lived in Seattle, same thing. And I hear it was that way in Minneapolis as well. But those same people, the live and let live crowd, be nice to everybody, the kind crowd, they're so afraid of hurting someone else's feelings or offending anyone that they will refuse to stand up for right and wrong. So you can just about, I don't know what it would take to get them to finally say enough is enough. So they came to those cities on purpose and started to destroy them because those are the ones who are most, open to having it happen to them. I mean, you're not just going to go anywhere and get away with what they've gotten away with.
Yeah.
It's not an accident that it's Portland, Seattle, and San Francisco. Because this is where the live and let live, really be nice crowd lives. And these people took advantage of that to the hilt. And Antifa, Portland's pretty much the capital of that. More than any other city. It's not the biggest city, because it's a mid-sized city for sure. But you don't see more per capita insanity in any other city in the United States, I don't think, than Portland, with Seattle following close behind.
Yeah. I mean, businesses leaving, people are probably leaving. I mean, they must be just hemorrhaging tax dollars.
Oh my goodness. Downtown, the tallest building, and that's another story. I think it's a 40-story building in downtown Portland. It's got they call it Big Pink or something, right? And it's funny, I remember that these buildings are relatively new because I remember them being built when I was a teenager, right? And that 40-story building, I think, was sold for I think it was like 300 or 400 million this past year, when it was purchased for twice that price 10 years ago. Now the numbers may not be exactly right, but you get what I'm saying,
right?
Because the occupancy rate has fallen so far. The occupancy rates in downtown Portland are like 40% occupancy, and it'd be lower than that, except that you buy a lease. And so it takes a long time for you to pay out that lease and walk out. So a lot of those places are empty. People are paying leases and the businesses have already left. So once those leases end, the occupancy rate is going to drop even lower. When you go into downtown Portland, I drove through it about 3 or 4 weeks ago. What strikes you, so they cleaned up all the mess. So 2 or 3 years ago, it was just nasty, tents everywhere. They cleaned all that up. However, you can't just clean things up and expect businesses are going to come back. They've been burned, right? You go downtown Portland, it's empty in the middle of the day. I mean, you don't see anyone. It's eerie. It's so weird to see a city that size with nobody walking the streets. Pristine and beautiful, just like it used to be. Nobody's there because all the businesses have fled. Flagship businesses like Nordstrom's, that was like one of the big stores, gone, right? Gone.
How is it pristine and beautiful when you have all these protesters destroying things?
Well, those people aren't in the core downtown anymore. So that federal building you see in the news is actually about 2 miles north, maybe a mile north of the core downtown area.
Okay.
They were all nasty with that about 3 years ago. They've cleaned it because it was tents everywhere back then. Well, all of that's been cleaned up. So it looks beautiful to the eye. Yeah. Then you realize what's wrong. Oh, there's no people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like when they used to, the king would come to town, to come to the villages, and they put up the facade, with all the painted pictures, so that like as the king was driving by on his coach, they could show
Oh,
that, or make it appear that they had this beautiful bucolic, villages
oh yeah.
all along the way, and not just
That's exactly what they
peasants.
did here. There's a long drive here. It's called Marine Drive that runs towards the airport. I think Biden flew out one year. I can't remember which year it was. And that thing was lined with tents. I mean, there's a long bike path on it. I used to train on bike rides on it. So I got an up close look to it. I mean, it was absolute filth and squalor, right? And the week before he got here, all cleaned up.
Well, Gavin did that. Gavin did that
Huh.
in LA. Remember
Oh,
when
that's right.
when the president of China came over?
Mhm.
Okay, let's go to LA.
Do LA. Do LA.
Okay. All right. So, good news. If you're in LA and you're a gun owner and you're trying to get your CCW, help is on the way. Harmeet Dillon, our AG, our beautiful and badass, kick-ass AG, is suing the county of LA and the sheriff because they are I can't remember the verbiage. I'm gonna have to look it up, but basically they're defying their own rules. AG Dillon points out that over the course of the last year, like April 24 to March 25, LA County had 3,982 CCW, CCWs, concealed carry, in case people don't know, concealed carry weapon applications. So almost 4,000 applications. And during that time, only 2 were approved. So it looks like when they kind of dug into it, on average, it takes about 3 years just to get an appointment. Now, San Diego, a couple years ago, we had a sheriff who was also dragging his feet with CCW approvals. And I know San Diego County Gun Owners Association and some other, gun rights groups got a hold of our sheriff and told him that if he didn't start following the laws and approving CCWs for appropriate people, that they would primary him. And next thing you know, you can get and as we were talking earlier today, it took me about 11 months just to get my appointment, my interview. But it's so much easier. I mean, it really just it's fingerprint or live scan. I guess they make you fill out a form, and then boom, and then of course you have to qualify. You have to take the test, but like boom, boom, like
Yeah.
this shouldn't be some sort of like special thing, right? Like it's in our Constitution, and no, California is not open carry, but Lori just asked that. But I thought that there was recently, wasn't there a Supreme Court decision that other AGs are looking to use to kind of push open carry, perhaps to some other states? There was a right? Am I wrong about that? But there was a state that had faced some, I guess it was state. I'm not making sense, but anyway, they now are kind of allowing open carry in a whole state, and that there's a lot of AGs that are going to be looking to kind of roll that out, use that as a model, and it's probably Florida. But
yeah, I'd heard that somewhere as well. It's like 13 states or something of AGs have signed on to that, or
yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah. So I mean, again, it's like, if you're carrying a gun on your hip, people might think twice about, approaching you, when you're walking alone in a parking garage. I mean, everywhere I go, I have my head on a swivel, not because I necessarily feel unsafe, but because I was just always trained. Like, you never, rifle for anything in your bag. You always carry your keys between your fingers. I mean, it's just smart, right?
Yeah.
And, I think it would, who knows what Portland would look like if people had open carry, or if at least they were maybe questioning themselves. Ooh, maybe I shouldn't approach this car because somebody might, have a gun in their car, right?
Yeah. Well, Well, again, nice people just they like to not even think about this. They do the ostrich thing. They want to put their head in the sand. And I can understand for years, hey, I was never anti Second Amendment. I just never bothered to get a gun because I never thought that our society would go like go to hell in a handbasket. Then it was like
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago, I decided, I think I'm going to have to do it.
Yeah.
And I was never really worried about someone breaking in the home sort of thing. That sort of thing, statistically, home invasion kinds of things are really, really rare.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a good idea because I was more afraid of the government than I was,
Yeah.
criminals.
Yeah.
Sad to say, but that's the reason for the Second Amendment in the first place, and that's why the left is so hardcore on getting rid of it because they don't want you to have a gun. Because if you have a gun, they might not be able to force you to do what they want to do. Every tyrant in history that's taken down a country has started with taking their guns. Besides, like killing off all the religious, they always start with that. The next thing is to get the guns. Once they have your guns, they sort of own you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know. And I think there's people out there. I think a lot of liberals are offended by guns and they're afraid of them. That these are the people that were that are just afraid of having a gun because they're just not sure what will happen to it. They blame the gun. It's like, well, I've got a bottle of gin in my freezer, but it doesn't drink itself. I mean, like I'm not sure when does free will and I don't know when does that no longer apply.
Yeah,
So
well, if you would try locking up the criminal that uses the gun, that'd be a great place to start because you could take all the guns away from the good citizens that have registered for them till the cows come home. You're not getting all the guns off the street. Then only criminals are going to have them. Then what do you
right,
think is going to happen?
right,
But
right.
I maintain that the people in power know this. We're making this argument with like with like your purple haired Aunt Nellie in the closet, right? But that's not what really matters. The people who are in power making these decisions, they know this already because
Yeah,
they want you to be powerless in the face of crime. They want you
right,
to be dependent on the government. They don't
right,
want anybody that might counter them in the event that they go tyrannical. So
right.
that's one of the reasons why it's funny. You never hear them making the argument about because I remember the argument when I was young used to be, well, the Second Amendment was so you could have a hunting rifle. They
Yeah,
used to actually make that argument. No, it never was about that. That's the silliest thing in the world. Like the 56 founding fathers sat around and debated whether you should have a gun so you can go hunting. That was not what it was about.
well, and when people say that, what they're doing is outing themselves as being stupid and uninformed. I mean, you don't really need to go much further than just actually reading, the Second Amendment. I mean, it's there to control the government. It says it right in there. So it just yeah, it's like when liberals use any of these talking points that other people have given them. That like Charlie Kirk had spewed hate speech. Like
Mhm.
you've just revealed yourself. Like your slip is showing. Your stupid is showing. Like did you spend a second listening to us? Like go to Instagram and watch a 30-second clip. It really only takes 30 seconds and you can see video after video after video. There's nothing right. I mean, like it's so easy to disprove
Yeah.
that
And not only
yeah,
that, even if he was, which he wasn't, that doesn't give you the right to shoot him.
of course.
Um,
Right, right, right,
that-
right.
this
So
is the basic moral code that these people are missing. I mean, I
yeah,
can remember back in the 60s and 70s when the Ku Klux Klan would walk around in full uniform, and no one was talking about going out there and shooting them. I remember when George Wallace. Well, I don't actually remember this because I was too young, but my parents talked about it all the time when he stood in the schoolhouse door at the University of Alabama and said, "Segregation now, segregation today, segregation forever," and nobody was talking about shooting George Wallace. It was basically like my mother said, let them show us who they are, and people will figure it out, and
yeah,
and good will win, which is
yeah,
precisely what happened. But
yeah,
these people don't want that because they know they'll lose. That they can't carry their arguments. That's one of the
right,
reasons why they have to go violent. They have to call you names, and eventually they have to go violent and kill you.
yeah. Well, you want to talk about stupid? This whole Tylenol, this response to the warnings about Tylenol, and really all they are is actually just elevating, exposure to the warnings about,
Mhm.
pregnant women taking Tylenol and giving Tylenol to babies after they have
Mhm.
had vaccines. And I guess the liberal response to that is to start gobbling down Tylenol pills. In fact, one woman gobbled so many pills down, a pregnant woman, that she ended up in the ER. And
Unbelievable.
like I would laugh too if it was just her, but it was her baby, her
Right.
unborn baby. I mean,
Mhm. Now, see, that is the word
it's
unhinged comes to mind. That is someone who's got a psychological problem.
but these are the same people that were like, I can't wait to get pregnant because I want to go have an abortion. I mean,
I,
I,
yeah,
I mean, as a Christian, I think, well, at least that baby is going to, going back home, which he'll probably be safer there than with you. If that's how you feel about being a parent.
yeah. This is where you have to go to spiritual attack, spiritual warfare, diabolical. These are words that I wouldn't have used 8 years ago, but I find myself saying there's no other way. There's no other words that could describe what we're seeing.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a protester who had a shirt on that says something like, um, "I have the right to kill my baby whenever I want to," kind of a thing. Like, this is a woman. What woman would ever say that about their own child, potentially, right? But they're out there saying and doing those kinds of things. Um,
Well, and
so
it makes you think, I'm sorry, it makes you think if that woman was holding the hand of a small child, would that be the sort of thing that would cause an arrest? She's threatening the life of her child.
yeah, no, no doubt, no doubt. But they have become that unhinged, that radicalized, if you will. And it goes back to, I remember I heard a pastor say years ago, uh, living a life away from God makes you stupid. And I didn't quite understand it then, but I understand it now. And when you're living in untruth,
Yeah.
eventually it has to make you insane.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it does. Lori just said Trump should tell them oxygen is good for them and see what the liberals do.
let's stop breathing. I love that. That's pretty funny, Lori. Let us all stop breathing.
I'm going to hold my breath.
Yeah. Trump said it's good. I can't do it.
That's right. They'll all have hold their
Yeah.
breath challenges. I don't know. How
It's
long
just
can you go?
the unwillingness to see simple reason. I mean, he sends the National Guard in the Washington D.C. and crime goes to zero. The borders are wide open. A week later, it's cleaned up. You know, we're not talking about rocket science here. This is simple stuff. We all know. I remember someone saying this about Vancouver, Washington, which is the side of the river I'm on. There was a friend of mine who was talking to another friend who was a cop who said basically it's the same about 200 people that commit like 95% of the property crimes. Right? We know who they are. They just keep doing it over and over again. If you lock up the 200, you got no crime. And this is probably true everywhere in the country.
Yeah, it probably is true. It probably, and then they would not mentor new criminals. If they're not there to run the gangs and terrorize the neighborhoods, then those folks that are potential recruits, wouldn't have that bad influence there.
Yeah, well,
So
I mean, I've always thought this, well, for a long time. About 25% of the population does the right thing because it's the right thing. If no one was looking, they're going to do the right thing. But there's a certain percentage of the population that only is driven by incentives. And if the incentive, the thought process is if I can get away with this, should I do this? What's the probability I'll get caught? The
yeah,
probability that I'll get caught is low, and or the probability that I'll get caught and nothing happens is low, then they'll go do it. And we see that over and over again. You look at these cities where you go to like a Walgreens, for example, and the storefront's locked. You have to place an order, and the person has to go get the thing and bring it back to you. Is that the kind of a place that you want to live in, or you go into the store and everything's locked down? You can't even get toothpaste without pushing a button and someone coming and getting the toothpaste
yeah,
for you.
yeah,
It's what a horrendous way to live. I
yeah.
once managed a KFC in central Los Angeles, and it had bulletproof glass, a bulletproof turnstile. You put your food on the thing, you turn it around, bulletproof. You put the money through a bulletproof slot. I kid you not. I had never seen it before in my life back then. It was like I tell my friends, and they couldn't believe it. But that's what it was like. I got to tell you a funny story about it because this is pure comedy. In order to take the money to the bank, I'm not kidding you. I would change clothes, or one of my managers would change clothes, put on street clothes, drive around the block a couple of times to make sure there's no criminals following us. Go to the drive-through window. They put the money in and we pretend like we were ordering chicken, a bucket of chicken. They put the money in a bucket like a chicken, hand to us through the window, and we only did this in pairs. So one person could be looking out the back window to make sure nobody was following you. Drive around the block, make sure you're not being trailed. Drive to the bank. The person with the bucket would jump out and run into the bank to deposit the money. And the bank, by the way, was behind bulletproof glass too. You can't make this up. But this is how a percentage of the population lives. And the general public outside of that is not actually aware of that.
No, I'm astounded.
Yeah.
I mean, and you think they're living that way. They're raising their children in that environment. I mean, like yeah. I don't even know. Like, I mean, I see some whacked out dude, at that end of the street, and I'm, taking my family to the other end of the street. Like, I have somewhere safer to go, right?
Oh.
They don't. Their entire neighborhood is that.
And what I'm telling you, that was 30 years ago. So that's not new in this neighborhood that I'm talking about. We actually had mirrors on the outside of the restaurant. So I wouldn't let the teenagers leave after dark, because you look in the mirrors and make sure nobody's waiting outside to jump them when they left. And only then will I let them go to their cars. You can only park where I could see your car out the window. Because if you got off work after dark, you had to sprint to your car. No exaggeration. And people live like that. Are you familiar with Nickerson Gardens?
No.
So Nickerson Gardens, I don't think it's there anymore, but it was a big housing project in central Los Angeles, kind of like Bed-Stuy in New York or Cabrini Greens in Chicago.
Okay.
And I had some kids who lived there, and I give them a ride home periodically at night. Well, they would tell me, and they were not joking. They said, when you pull up, drop me off, and then turn and get on the freeway immediately. Don't stop, just go. And so I drop them off, and they would start sprinting across the field to their apartment building, and I could hear the sounds of small arms pop, pop.
No.
Pop. I'm not exaggerating. And they meant every word of it. Don't stop at any red lights, get on the freeway, get out of Dodge City. And so it's funny on the one hand, but on the other hand, we have swaths of Americans that we're allowing to grow up under these circumstances. I did a quick survey at that same restaurant. How many of you guys have been held up by a gun? Everybody. I was the only person in the store who hadn't been held up by a gun. I was the only one.
And how long had you been there?
I've been there like maybe 4 or 5 months.
Oh.
Right. Every single person at some point, somewhere in their life, had a gun pointed to them. One kid asked me to help write the language for the funeral notice for their sister that got shot. Right. I'm not kidding you.
This is so tragic, Don. How is it that we have a country where this happens? Like you said, how are we allowing it?
Yeah,
I mean, as a people, I can see how they're just beaten down, right? I mean, you're in an abusive relationship, you're beaten down. You're in an abusive government-controlled area. Everything that you should be receiving fulfillment and joy and feel peace about, your neighborhood, your school, the place where you go to work and earn a living, all of that is filled with criminals and filth.
This was central Los Angeles. Think to yourself, you could get in your car and drive 15 minutes and be in Manhattan Beach. Right? You could go 30 minutes and be in Palos Verdes. You could go, 30 minutes the other direction and be in like Irvine, some of the wealthiest places in the country. How do we allow ourselves to allow our neighbors to live in this circumstance? People have we've looked the other way. And now what's happening is, because we haven't done anything to fix that, this stuff will expand and grow. It's not going to just stay there.
Yeah, it's like smoke on a plane. It doesn't just stay in that guy's seat, I mean, the criminals get in their cars, they drive around, they I mean, like, it's silly to think it's going to be just contained. I mean, I guess it kind of has been, to a large degree. That's why people feel safe living in Manhattan Beach, or they feel safe living in, Redondo, but they won't
Mhm.
live in Torrance, they won't live in,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah. Well, Palo
Lawndale,
Alto,
yeah,
you cross the Highway 101, you go from Palo Alto to East Palo Alto. Trust me, it's like going from it's like going to Bangladesh. Right? You cross the tracks and it's a whole another world, right?
that's
But
sad.
here's the thing, it's not even so much the physical location, it's the rot in the culture. Because the reason those areas are like that is because we destroyed two things. Number one, we destroyed the family, so
Hmm.
you have no dad in the house,
Hmm.
and number two, we destroyed the source of morality, which was
Hmm.
the church. So in those generations, you have that happening. Well, so now you have about 80% what children born out of wedlock in these core black areas. But you also have in the general population, that number is now like 40%. Whereas if you go back to 1960, that number was like 5% in the general population, like 15% in the black population.
Right.
So, that behavior travels.
Hmm.
And we see that. So
Yeah.
we got to start fixing that. Well, we can do all of these elections, do all this fine and great stuff that we're doing, but if we don't start fixing the multi-generational stuff, and it starts in the home, starts getting these folks back to church, and the other piece to this is the public school system.
Hmm.
Stop letting these Marxists raise our kids.
Hmm.
Those three things have to happen, or 40 years from now, all of this is for naught.
That's right. Well, it'll be interesting to see how things move forward with, the decentralization, or I guess I should say the elimination of the education, Department of Education, and giving money back to the states, and there will be true accountability. All of these rankings that these states have, and with these assessment tests, they're going to have nobody else to blame than themselves. And
Yeah.
so all of a sudden, local superintendents aren't going to be able to go, oh, well, the federal government requires it, so
Mhm.
that's why we have to do this and that. There's not going to be any bureaucracy except for the state bureaucracy and then
Oh,
locals. So,
yeah, and we got to introduce competition to it, because without competition, they'll just keep. It's the reason why sports teams get better. They get better
yeah,
because they have competition.
right.
Businesses get better because they have competition. You remember when General Motors and Ford, no pun intended, drove the auto industry over the cliff in the '80s, and the Japanese came in and claimed their clock. Well, the only reason they were able to start building better cars. You remember in the '70s, '80s, cars were junk. I'm a little older than you, so you may not remember, but these cars were ugly pieces of junk, gas guzzlers. And when Honda and Toyota came in and just cleaned their clock, now you
Hmm.
look at the quality of American cars, they're like fabulous. But
Hmm.
I remember when they were garbage.
Yeah,
And the only reason they improved is because they were forced to improve. And the
right.
same thing is true of the public school system is going to keep doing this as long as they're getting our money for like not making any changes. When there's
Yeah,
competition, when you start losing money, which i.e. losing students, you either change or die. And it's fine with me, whichever one you want. You can
yeah,
die, you can change. It's fine with
yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, um, I think that the teachers union and politicians who are funded by the teachers union have been able to, create this party line about how anything other than public schools is degrading education, and it's just they have no results to back it up. And I mean, it's been getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, I think yeah, anyway, across the board, but in California, like, we used to be one of the top school
Oh,
districts,
it was awesome.
and now we're in the bottom 5. I mean, it's so, so, so sad.
Yeah. Same with Oregon. The governor basically declared there's not going to be any testing anymore. So it doesn't matter. If you spend 4 years, you graduate. So there's no objective standards anymore. I mean, that's how low the bar is in Oregon. And here's the good side of that: the percentage of students is dropping everywhere, which means that people just aren't going to school. It's
Yeah,
like anything else. If your quality of product is that bad, why bother going?
yeah.
Um, I think while you were out, I did part of this podcast on. There's a couple of school districts in Salem, Oregon, which is the capital of the state, where they're having problems. They're sending teachers out to behave like truant officers, going door to door to find out where the students are. So imagine a product that's so bad that you got to go force people to buy it. That's literally what you have in Oregon. How about try this? Try building a quality product or service, and then people
Right.
will want to go there rather than you having to go chase them down.
Yeah. Well, I did see the nation's report card. You and I talked about it before I left town, and and really, the results are abysmal. They're down everywhere, math, English, and but also the birth rate is down.
Huh.
And so the schools are now saying, well, the reason why we're not seeing the same numbers of kids coming through the public schools is because we simply don't have the number of kids anymore. But, one of the numbers that I was always trying to go after is, well, what is our capture rate? I don't need to know how many kids we have in our school. I need to know what is our capture rate? What percentage of the population is choosing to enroll in public school versus private, charter, homeschool? That's all we really care about, right? You
Mhm.
can't do anything about the number of people, the number of kids that are out there,
Well,
but but that's really the figure that people need to be focused on.
yeah. Well, the
And
other thing too, for these leftists that say that, well, how about if you stop killing the kids? Then maybe you'd have more of what other business kills the customers?
right.
And then they're upset because there's not. You see that Portland's a crack up. We got a high school here, and so again, I covered this a couple of days ago. It's got like when I was a kid, the same high school had around 2,000 students in it. Right now, it's got like 300. And you can drive those neighborhoods, and I know these neighborhoods like the back of my hand, and you won't see a kid anywhere. It's like going to Japan. There's no kids anywhere. So they're shipping kids in from other places in order to drive up the population of school kids there. But here's the other thing: the neighborhood's filled with like people in their 40s and 50s who don't have any kids at all, or it's a very, let's face it, it's a very gay area, and they tend to, for whatever reasons I can't think of, not have kids. So you put policies in place that reduce the population, then you're upset because you don't have any kids. Go figure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
But, I think the what people are seeing and the sentiment is the pendulum is swinging back. And there is, you've got young people going to church. You've got, traditional values that are now, kind of back in vogue. I don't know how many people are going to be like making their own bread and cheese, for like the long haul. But if we can get our economy in control, if we can get some of these tariff dollars actually put back in people's pockets, and we can restart the engine of our economy, then we can have a mom stay at home,
Oh,
or we can have, or they can both work, but they don't have to kill themselves, in order to work. I mean, it's tough. Like every day I certainly feel every day I show up and I have to prove myself all over again.
mhm.
There's no there's no skating anywhere. And I don't know anybody who's like, yeah, I just sort of dial it in. No, nobody dials it in. You've got to work your butt off.
Well,
I mean, I know that there's that whole quiet quitting thing that's going on, but
mhm,
I I think that only works in like large companies where you've got lots and lots of layers. I mean, everybody
mhm,
that if you work at a small company where your boss can see you, you better
mhm.
show up hard every day.
It'll eventually show up in a big corporation too, because when the bottom line starts getting hit, they start searching for where those dollars are. So you can, like Joe Louis used to say, you can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's kind of one of these things, I think, and I'm just noodling this around. So the culture has to reconfigure, what's important. So for the last 40 or 50 years, we've been selling that happiness isn't getting stuff. Number
Yeah.
one. Number two, we've been selling that it used to be that feminism meant the ability to be able to, the suffragettes, think about that, the right to vote, the right to get jobs, right to work, to get education, all good and wonderful stuff. But somewhere in the last 40 years, that morphed into, if a woman chooses to be a wife and mom and stay home, that's a bad thing. Or she's not achieving her capability, right? That's like a really wrong thing. And it morphed into we measure people's worth in society by how much stuff they have and how many degrees they have. And so we have a bunch of people pursuing things that aren't really in their or society's best interests.
Mhm.
And so now we have a society with a lot of people who are very lonely. They might be successful chasing those things, but at the end of the rainbow, what is there?
Mhm.
Uh, there's no there. And if you go back to the intention, well, when the founders wrote, what was it, The Pursuit of Happiness? I think it was Thomas Jefferson's line. That didn't mean what it means now. It meant the pursuit of virtue. That's a whole different thing. Yes, we want you to live in a society where you're free to pursue and acquire things. That's true. But the most important pursuit is the pursuit of virtue.
Yeah.
That's a whole different animal. So you
Yeah.
see these schools, they'll say they're, this is I can't remember the names of these schools would be the college pursuit of college or whatever they'll call it. Like, that's what they specialize in. 95% of our kids go to college, right? Well, how about 95% of them graduate and they're virtuous?
It's so funny. You've brought that up a few times, and that's actually I do see in some of my education circles. Now, again, that circle is small. I mean, I work for a military academy, and
Mhm.
that virtue, honor, courage, respect, loyalty, that stuff. I mean, those are the values that right now the military, really advocates for. But it's I think people are recognizing that it is, I mean, of course, those are biblical values too. Um, People are recognizing that we all need to be that way.
Mhm.
That it's not a subset of our population. Like those are the building blocks
Mhm.
to good people. And
Mhm.
regardless of what those people do for work or whether they work or not, these are the people that build a society. And so we all really do need to be focusing on, okay, so where are you going to get that? Well, you get it from going to church and reading your Bible, and not just at a cursory level. Like you got to get in it, you got to live it. You get it from having a strong family connection, right? And then just walking the talk.
Well, here's a great line. I think it's so apropos. I wrote this down. I saw this. I can't remember where I saw it, but Alexis de Tocqueville was a Frenchman who, in the 18th century, basically spent a lot of time, 18th, 19th century, wandering in the United States and writing about what made the country great. So here's a couple of things I wrote down because I think they're so apropos. When observing the young republic, de Tocqueville remarked, "Her greatness lies not in her fields or her factories, but in her churches." That was the one. Here's the other one, and I love this one. He said, "When America ceases to be good, it will cease to be great." Whew, does that hit you? Right. When she ceases to be good, she will cease to be great. And
Hmm.
if you think about what's made America unique amongst any of the countries that have ever existed, went to war to free slaves, and with the mother country, sent her navy to the high seas to stop slavery. Think of this. Every civilization that's ever existed in the history of man has had slaves. None of them have lifted the finger to stop it, except for two countries, the United States and Great Britain. And the folks who lifted that finger to cause that to stop were the abolitionists. And what were the abolitionists? They were
Churches.
Quakers.
Yeah.
They were people of religious backgrounds. They were Quakers. They were Protestants. They were Catholics. Who was on the front lines in the civil rights movement? Who caused that? Those were Christians. Those were people of the faith that did that. They call him Martin Luther King. No, it was the Reverend Martin Luther King, which the left likes to forget. So, and that's the other thing. Like, there's like to take religiosity out of the public square. Religiosity is the public square. Uh,
Hmm.
Laws come from morality. Where does morality come from? Morality comes from religiosity. You cannot take it out of the public square. And we, as conservatives or people of faith, have allowed them to take us out of the public square with these silly statements like separation of church and state
Hmm.
and that kind of thing. And that's not what whatever that amendment was about. It was about that we should not have a government mandated religion. It didn't mean that you couldn't talk about religion in the public square. So anyway, there's my evening rant.
Preach. Yeah, I'm in it. I mean, I agree 100%.
Yeah. Well, we can't close the show out without you talking about the Palisades thing, though. Folks, you got to hear
Oh,
the
okay.
Palisades. So, what happened since the fires? So, what has occurred since then?
Okay, so back to LA. So everybody knows about the fires that were happening in LA and the destruction. And there's actually been 12 people um, 12 people documented to have died because of the fires. And Trump came out. He had a press conference with, I think, Karen Bass and some leaders, some state leaders. And he basically called everybody on the carpet and said that the feds are going to remove all red tape. Anybody who wants to build in LA, the feds are not going to get in your way at all. So now the only people that are going to be causing any problems and any obstructions is local bureaucracy, local government. So, Mayor Bass, are you committed to removing all obstacles so that these people can get back into their homes? Oh, of course we are. Of course we are. And, of course, the state and representatives, oh, yes, 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 yes. Newsom has gone on and on and on about, he's solving problems, right? Well, I know it's going to be a big surprise to you, Don, but it turns out they haven't actually been solving problems. And so people have not been allowed to build. It's still devastation out there. It looks like, a moonscape, basically. And on top of that, Newsom has just approved a plan where all of this land that people can't build their big homes on again, they're going to be able to, which is so kind of Newsom, honestly. They're going to be able to sell their land at pennies on the dollar to commercial developers who have already been approved to build, multifamily, low income development. So now you've got these poor families. When I say poor, I mean these unfortunate families who've lost their homes. They are unable to rebuild, and now they're being forced to recoup, any investment by selling pennies on the dollar. And then you've got these unfortunate people whose homes were spared, and they're going to be surrounded by low-income housing. So what happens to their schools? What happens to their neighborhoods? What happens to their personal safety? What happens to their property values?
Boy, I tell you, it is such a classic example of when you allow Marxists to be in office. And the sad part about it is those people voted in that geography 80% Democrat. They are reaping basically what they have sown.
Yeah.
And it's horrendous. Having said that, I still don't think they deserve that. And hopefully they can have an election there and reverse all of this. For the life, and we talked about this off air just a moment ago, for the life of me, can't believe that many Californians are at this moment that stupid. I just don't believe that they would elect this. I don't think they elected it in the first place.
No, I don't either. But if anybody's on Instagram, there's a gentleman by the name of Spencer Pratt, and his channel is just Spencer Pratt, Pratt, and he goes on a daily rampage against Newsom. And he is calling him out. He's doing FOIA requests. He's tracking the money. He's tracking the lack of activity. He has got his finger on the pulse of all this corruption that's going on, and he's very entertaining as well. So if you want to follow it, check out Spencer Pratt on Instagram. He's
I will definitely write that down.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I am on the whole. We talked about a lot of things that would come across as negative, but I am super positive because think about where we were like just a year ago.
Yeah.
And the number of things that have changed.
Yeah.
The fact that we can still talk about this at all is a miracle, given where we were like a year or two ago. So the progress has been sensational. Even in the face of these assassinations that they've conducted, that's just led to more people coming to our side because, again, go back to what my mom said, the mask is off. We see who you are. And the more we see who you are, the more people are going to leave that side of the fence. They can see that there's nothing but evil there. So I think good things are happening and good things will continue to happen, but we have to keep the faith and we have to stay on top of it. We can't go sleep at the switch because we're winning the fight, if you will. So that's all I had for the evening. Leslie, are you still there? There you go.
I am. Sorry, my computer was dying and I had to plug it in. So I didn't want you to.
I got you. So
technical difficulties.
I hear you. Any closing comments for the evening?
I mean, every day is just another surprise, and I look forward to it. I love your comedy commentary. So bring that next week. We need some laughter, Dawn.
But
We
I
definitely
will
need
find
some
something.
laughter.
I will find something funny about Portland every day of the week. So
Yeah.
I'll bring some more Portland fun next week.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, anyway, I appreciate it. And I appreciate the comments. Thanks for, contributing and encouraging us and, providing, thought provoking, chat messages. So anyway, thanks everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Let freedom ring. See you next week, Leslie.